Welcome back to Financial Fortitude, where we help you make smarter financial decisions today without sabotaging your future self. I'm Michael Acosta.
And I'm Brady Hemmerly. Today we're revisiting one of our favorite themes, when the math doesn't matter. Because sometimes, and just being honest, the spreadsheet says one thing, but your peace of mind says another.
Exactly. We're talking specifically to retirees today, or really anyone who's going through this emotional crossroad, especially those living on a fixed income, though, who are staring down a decision they really don't want to make. Do I keep limping along in my unreliable car, or is it time to bite the bullet and buy something more dependable?
It's not just about the monthly payments or resale values. It's about safety, freedom, and avoiding the stress of being stranded on the side of the road. Sometimes the fear of what if with your current vehicle outweighs the cold hard math.
So in this episode, we'll unpack how to think through big ticket decisions in retirement, like buying a new or newer car, even when the numbers might not be perfect on paper. And spoiler alert, not every decision in retirement is a math problem. Sometimes it's a lifestyle decision. Welcome to Financial Fortitude, a podcast for high earners, families, and business owners. We are your hosts, Michael Acosta
and Brady Hemmerly. Each week we bring purpose-driven financial guidance to you so you can be assured you're on the right path. If you're looking to become an extraordinary wealth builder, let's dive in. Alrighty, Michael, well, let's get into it because I think this is a conversation that you and I have both been having more frequently, especially recently, with all of the changes in the economic and the political landscape. And a lot of clients are now asking us, hey, is now the time to buy a new car, refinance into a new car, or hey, big picture, I think now is the time to upgrade into something that makes more sense for our family. And it's a big financial choice.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big financial choice depending on if you're going to pay for it outright in cash or if you're going to finance it, right, depending on the terms. And we've been for the last couple of years in a relatively higher, not necessarily historical high, but higher interest rate environment when comparing all things. And so this is not necessarily a lifelong decision, but it is something that needs to be taken seriously for those who are on a fixed income, whether it be those who are in retirement or those who are very limited with discretionary cash flow as a young professional or a young family. And with everything that's swirling around in the media around tariffs and increased costs of imported goods, there's a little bit of fear-mongering going on, right? Especially at the dealerships as well as in the media. So the questions that keep arising with client conversations are really stemming from that fear of the unknown, of what to expect 3, 6, 9, even a year from now.
So let's jump into that, and for the sake of today's episode, I'm going to play a bit more of the client, or at least share sentiments that we've been hearing from a lot of clients. And I'll probably be the more emotional side of things, right? When the math doesn't matter to me, and in this circumstance, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate for you, the math matters a little bit more. So One of the things I think that I've been hearing, at least to this point, is one of two things. Number one, I have an older car that really needs to be replaced here in the next 1 year, if not certainly 3 years. Or it's I have a car that maybe I don't trust too much and now seems like as good a time as ever to replace it with everything that's going on.
Yeah, so I would say within both of those, you really have varying perspectives. And this is just my personal opinion, because you have some auto owners who purely view the vehicle as a means of getting from A to B. And they just want the reliability of it. They don't really care about the aesthetics, how it looks, or anything else like that. They just want something that's reliable that they can hop into and safely get to their destination, maybe even in a fuel-efficient manner for many. The other one might be someone who wants something that's maybe more trendy. And so I think we have to look through the lens of, one, the person who owns the vehicle, what are their overall viewpoints or emotional ties to this vehicle in this decision, but also from a prioritization standpoint, is this purely an emotional decision, or is there some sort of financial ROI that can return on investment that can be leveraged here? Personally, I know whenever I'm under extreme stress, I can make bad financial decisions, right? So typically, right? Because you become irrational in many instances with stress and anxiety and everything else. And a lot of those will often stem from the unknowns, right? The 3 to 6 to 9 months and beyond referenced early on. So for that type of client, I think it becomes a question of, well, is this really a need, or is it purely an emotional desire out of pure convenience?
And I think that goes back into what we've talked about many times on this podcast is really purpose-driven decisions. What's the goal for a new car? What's the purpose for use here? At least initially helps frame out the conversation, and perhaps even me being the client slows me down. Instead of me jumping straight into a buying process or going straight to the dealer, hey, let's slow down a little bit and work through what our needs are before we get the sales pitch from someone who's incentivized to sell me the car.
No, absolutely. And so if you came to me and you posed this statement of like, hey, Michael, I'm really losing trust in my vehicle that I'm driving day in and day out. Maybe I drive X amount of miles per year and I travel to visit family or kids or whomever, right? I need something that's more reliable and I don't feel like I can trust this car. Well, my first response, aside from acknowledging the overall sentiment, is, okay, well, what about the vehicle do you not trust currently? Is it a mechanical issue? Is it a mileage issue? Again, some people will drive cars into the dirt with over 200, 300,000 miles and hold on to that car for 10, 12, 15 years if the opportunity to, maintenance and manage the car isn't extravagant or excessive. And so help me better understand what's really driving this so that I can better serve you in making this decision, because it's at its core, it's purely a rational versus reasonable decision.
Yep.
Right. And that's a very hard intersection to work through on your own, in my personal opinion.
So let's discuss it then. If I'm Mr. and Mrs. Client here, here's my concern, right? I'm getting a little bit older. I am still driving the same amount, but I feel a little bit more nervous that based on how many miles my car has or the age that it's at, combined with some of the repairs that I've done in the past, I think I need a new car. And based on everything I'm reading, hearing, and to be quite honest, how I feel, I think now's the time, right? As soon as possible. What are some of the considerations that I should begin to think through before jumping straight into that decision as Mr. or Mrs. Client?
Yeah, I would say we need to collect some data and do some due diligence. So one, how old is your car? How many miles are on it? What would you say the overall value is? Maybe even leveraging a tool like Kelley Blue Book to figure out what that is informally. And then, if you're really gung-ho on going out and getting more concrete information, take it to a couple dealerships where you might consider purchasing one of their newer vehicles or recently newer vehicles, thinking about 2024 vehicles versus 2025, and see what type of trade-in value you might get. Right? You might go to 2 to 3 different dealerships and get 3 different offers, and now you have leverage on all 3 of them based on what the higher offer is for your trade-in value. And in some instances, there's also the question of, all right, well, some of the mechanical concerns, assuming it's a mechanical concern, are any of them covered under the powertrain warranty, right? Or any sort of warranty that's offered when you purchase the newer car initially. Some places will offer a 60-mile powertrain warranty. Others might offer a 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. So let's fully exhaust that warranty, assuming that there's no cost coming out of your pocket to make any sort of modifications to the car based on recalls or any sort of damages or mechanical problems that you might be having, before just succumbing to, hey, I brought my car into the dealership because it was having issues. Yeah, it's under warranty, but they're now telling me that I should potentially go ahead and trade it in for a newer model, go ahead and level up, upgrade, because, hey, tariffs are coming, the costs are going to be higher, and you may not get the same purchasing power now or in the future that you have now, right? Especially from a trade-in perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that statement at its core, right? Aside from no one really knowing how these tariffs that have been swirling around in the media and from a geopolitical standpoint are really truly going to impact the MSRP on these cars.
So right? I like where you started here, because we haven't even jumped into my financial situation yet. Before running the math, at least in the background of, hey, how does this affect me and my family financially? We're going to the table first and foremost with information that we should be able to collect and have in our arsenal before jumping to a conclusion. How much is my car worth? How many miles are on it? What is the trade-in value? What other options are out there? What does competition look like among dealerships? Before we run any of the financial numbers, it sounds like that's where you'd have me as the client start first.
I would start there, and I would also send you on a visionary journey in the sense that, what do you want out of this next car if you decide to upgrade or change your vehicle? Like, what are the things that you must have in this vehicle from an aesthetics perspective, from a features perspective, right? Do you want the panoramic sunroof? Do you want the rails that go across the top because you travel frequently and you're going to be carrying stuff on top? Do you need a third row? Do you enjoy captain seats? Do you want leather seats? Do you want heated steering wheel and remote start and all this stuff, right? All of the comforts of the world that can be incorporated into the purchase of a vehicle, like what are you looking for? Because at the end of the day, that's going to drive, one, you in the direction of what manufacturers offer that type of vehicle, as well as the potential all-in cost.
Okay.
And so by understanding what your potential realm of cost looks like, as well as understanding what your trade-in values look like, the one variable we haven't talked about is, well, where am I going to get the best financing? Am I going to get it through the dealerships, promotions or offers, or do I need to go to a local credit union or bank to get the best rating? And you've heard us mention this in the past, the interest rate tail shouldn't wag the dog. But from there, I think it then cascades into, well, what do financing options look like? And let's get into negotiation with the actual dealer, which buying a car, I don't really know many people that love doing that. I despise it because the dealer holds all the cars. It knows exactly how much money they need to make off the vehicle and how much money they can give up in a cost reduction or a price reduction, right? You basically have to have the stamina and the personality to keep going back to the well and saying, look, you got to take a little bit more off, which my personality is not that way, so it doesn't bode well for me.
So it sounds like big picture, I've got to get the best understanding of, hey, what my true goals are for the next car that I'm going to own, and then all of the information that I need to make a decision just solely based on the car. So with that in mind, let's say, hey, I want A, B, C, and D in my car, and here are X, Y, and Z different options that are sitting out there. Now I have a little bit of leverage. Where do we go next in reviewing from a financial perspective? Does this work? Can it happen if I want to upgrade into that next model, or if I want to add this really fancy bell and whistle that may cost a little more? What things do I need to be thinking about before I make a perhaps rash decision? If we're now talking when the math doesn't matter, now the math does matter.
By this point, the math does matter, and it should, right? Because you're going to make a financial decision, and hopefully it's a purposeful one. I would say what we need to do is assess the financing options. How many months are you financing it for? What was the interest rate? And what does your monthly payment actually look like? And how much higher is that compared to your former one? As well as where are you at in your retirement journey? Like, these can be polar opposite conversations for someone who maybe had the opportunity to exit the workforce a little bit earlier, pre-full retirement age, and had anticipations of their current car being the vehicle that lasted them, maybe 10 years for when they decide to turn on their Social Security benefit, right? Which is, in my mind, a guaranteed income source for the life of the individual who's receiving that benefit, right? Based on current rules of Social Security. So if you're now having to level up or change the car, that changes the original plan, which, in my opinion, emphasizes the need for having proactive financial planning and not static financial planning, because things change, just like in this scenario, versus the retiree who's maybe on the back nine, a little bit closer to no longer being on this earth, and thinking, okay, well, even if I finance this car, I maybe won't even be here long enough to see it paid off, right? So it may be less detrimental financially compared to the other individual who's early on. So I would say now it's a matter of comparing and contrasting. Okay, well, what do the new terms look like of this deal compared to the existing terms of my car, right? How far am I from actually paying off my car? If I get a desirable trade-in value, how much of that's going to be eroded based on the payoff of my existing car? And then the net of that's being used as a down payment on the new car. So I think once you go through that visionary experience and you do your due diligence and your research, now it's, hey, let's get the actual numbers based on the vehicle that I like with all the bells and whistles that I want, because the intent's that hopefully you're not having to upgrade your car frequently, but maybe every 5 to 8 years, 5 to 10 years, unless you're somebody who wants to flip cars frequently because you want to be trendy and have the new styles and the new features. In that case, you might want to consider leasing a car, which will be a topic for a different day, a different episode.
Sure.
Right.
So we're here so far. Let's pause. I've got the vision. I've gone through the visionary journey. I've got an understanding of exactly what I want and why. I've got the leverage against some of the different options. I've now got the actual numbers from the financial and financing perspective. And I haven't run the math yet, not as the client. That's what I have you for. But what I suspect is that my new monthly payment on this newer car is going to be more, and more enough that I think it's going to matter. I'm a little worried about it. So what things do I need to think through, or would anyone need to think through when making a real change in their financial plan? Because this wasn't in the plan when we talked last year. Now it is.
Yeah, it wasn't in the plan when we originally set out on this journey, and now it is, because it was an unknown. It was an unforeseen based on the reliability of the car, right? And the lack of trust in the car. And so I would say we lean on two things. We lean on a rational analysis, something that's more technical, and we also lean on more of a reasonable analysis where we figure out or at least check the pulse of the emotional aspects of the client. My first question then comes back, is this a need or is it a want? And I know I mentioned that early on. So do you need to go out and buy a new car, right? So let's use the scenario that the car had some mechanical issues that were still covered under warranty for at least another 40,000 miles. Okay, you had a 100,000 mile powertrain warranty. And let's just say that this is the second time that you've had an issue with the car in the same vicinity on the vehicle, but it's fully covered under warranty. The biggest inconvenience is maybe that you're having to rent a car, or they're going to loan you a car for a week or two, right?
And the biggest inconvenience for me is now I don't trust the car anymore.
And now you don't trust the car.
That's the emotional side.
Yeah, and that's the emotional side of it. So my question is, well, do you need to buy this car? And if the answer is no, then it's like, okay, well, then how do we overcome the sensation of, well, I just don't trust it. And if I don't trust it, I'm not going to enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, then I'm going to be in a bad mood, for lack of better words. And so at that point, it becomes more of a convenience thing. But sometimes the emotional aspect of these financial decisions outweigh the technical or the rational side of the decision, right? Which is why we talk about when the math doesn't matter. Because if the cost of the vehicle isn't so much more than the original car that it puts your financial plan at risk, it just creates a season of life where there's a little bit less discretionary cash flow. Maybe you have to actually count your pennies a little bit further now, or maybe travel less, or maybe splurge on things that you were doing previously in exchange for a more reliable vehicle, something that's upgraded by maybe 4.5, 5 years from your previous car, and something that hopefully won't run the risk of the same mechanical issues, then let's do it. But we can at least say, okay, is this a need or is it a want? Because if it's a lack of trust, it's purely a want, in my opinion, versus it being undrivable and completely unsafe. Because once the warranty fixed the vehicle, well, in theory, it should be safe to drive. Now, the risk is that you're back at the mechanic or back at the dealership 2 months, 3 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road, or maybe 5 years from now. But that, again, if you don't trust the car, you're thinking in shorter time frames, right?
Especially I won't drive
if it's
it
something
anyways.
that's yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's like, hey, if I don't trust it, I'm not going to drive it to begin with.
Or
and
when
that
I
starts
do
to affect
drive,
my lifestyle.
I'm going to be overly stressed about how I'm driving and where I'm driving.
Yes. Yep.
Right? Especially if it's a significant mechanical issue. So then it's like, okay, well, financially, are you okay with having a little bit less money? Or are you okay with potentially having to go get a part-time job?
Or I think the last, and where we see a lot of clients go is, are you comfortable taking more from your nest egg?
Yeah. In the essence of, hey, if we weren't planning on drawing down assets or taking distributions from accounts as rapidly, right? Because again, in this scenario, it's a gap year from when we exited the workforce to when we plan on turning on Social Security and other guaranteed income streams for this individual to live off of. Then it's like, okay, well, maybe we're going to accelerate the spend down of these assets a little bit further. I won't say significantly, but it's not something that's ignorable, right? You can't just overlook it.
Yeah, it's not $10 a month. It's $100.
Maybe it's an extra $150. Maybe it's an
$1,000
extra $200 a month, right? For someone who's already on a lean fixed income. So again, if the amount of joy you're going to receive in your retirement years is higher than, otherwise sticking with the current vehicle and just kind of having a sour taste in your mouth, well, then let's go have that joy, because you know what? One thing that we have to acknowledge is that tomorrow's not promised, right? You may have the opportunity to spend every single dollar that you've saved, or only get to spend a fraction of it because of something that occurs medically or health-wise. So I think that has to be considered.
So 2 things that I'm seeing here. The first one is that if I'm Mr. and Mrs. Client, this becomes an even greater challenge if I do not already have an income plan, whether I've developed it on my own or I've gone to a financial professional to help. I would think it would be almost impossible for me to determine whether this works mathematically, let alone emotionally, if I don't have an income plan to begin with. And then on top of that, if I do happen to have an income plan, the real question is, do I have wiggle room? Has this been built in the plan in some form or fashion? So talk to us a little bit more about the importance of building an income plan to begin with, and then where we see flexibility or how clients build in flexibility over time.
Yeah, I would say the importance of building a income distribution plan or deaccumulation plan as a retiree is something that needs to be considered. In the longer runway you have before needing to turn on the income, I think my opinion is that the higher probability of you finding success financially, right? At the end of the day, the cards are what they are and you have to play them. But if you have a longer runway or more time in the game to be able to exchange your cards for better cards, why not take advantage of that? So I would say when you're working with a trusted financial advisor who's taking you through the process of designing a retirement distribution plan or an income distribution strategy, they should, and more than likely they are, I would imagine, running the scenarios of what ifs, right? What if the portfolio or the assets don't grow by any percent over the course of the lifetime as far as life expectancy? What if there's an unexpected large life event from a cost perspective that occurs, such as having to upgrade a car, either due to emotional desire or being forced to because mechanically or maybe it gets totaled? Or what if there's a health scare and you have a large medical bill? Like, these things need to be considered. But also, if your distribution plan allows for flexibility based on your asset location, where your assets are actually held and where your income is going to be derived from, you have greater flexibility. When you have greater flexibility, when these types of scenarios come up, you can pivot more. You have more options versus being very limited and very inflexible.
So again, if I'm Mr. and Mrs. Client and I've got an income plan developed and my financial professional has built in a good bit of flexibility, you're the financial professional in this example, we've built in some of this flexibility. Emotionally and mathematically, what does it allow me to do? Like, what options do I have now?
I would say we have a couple things, right? So if we go back to the scenario of the vehicle, let's just say it's a mechanical issue. If we don't fix it, there's a safety risk. If it's under warranty and it gets fixed, that safety risk should be eliminated. If it occurs again and there's no warranty on the car anymore because, it's happened years down the road when the miles are above whatever the powertrain warranty is, or the warranty on the overall car, then we have to identify, well, what's the cost of replacing this type of scenario if it were to occur again? And is that cost something that we can budget for and self-insure, or do we need to transfer that risk to a new vehicle, in my mind, right? Typically, you're going to transfer the risk to something else. Well, in this case, we're going to transfer it to a new vehicle. And if that cost of fixing it out of our own pockets is very minimal, well, now the variable that you're trying to pinpoint is, well, when is this unknown mechanical issue going to arise again? And again, is it going to happen a month from now, 9 months from now, 4 years from now, never? And so then it goes back to that emotional, psychological struggle. And so that's where I think there has to be a premium put on the overall happiness or overall confidence in the situation. And that's the reasonable part, right? Morgan Housel refers to that refers to the reasonable outcome being you being able to sleep like a baby at night without any sense of worry. The rational being more of the technical analysis, the output from a cash flow analysis or a spreadsheet output. So
mathematically, I can make this car payment.
Mathematically,
and not put my
I can make
risk.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I think if you can find both outcomes, then why not, right? And so the outcome of the conversation with my scenario was more of, well, it doesn't seem like it's more of a need. It seems like it's more of a convenience because of the lack of trust in the vehicle that you're feeling. And it doesn't seem like even if the car is fixed under the warranty, that trust is going to be reinstated or earned back. So then in that scenario, it was like, okay, well, you've kind of already made your decision. I'm not going to tell you not to go buy this car unless when running the numbers, it purely blows up the success of your financial plan.
Yep.
Now, again, the financial plan is assuming that individuals are going to live to maybe age 85, 89, 92, 95. If you want to be very conservative, maybe to age 100. Every individual is going to be a little bit different as far as life expectancy. And so that's where I think we don't need to lock our clients out of their money. We need to encourage them to spend their money in a purposeful and prudent manner. And if they've gone through a proactive retirement income distribution plan, well, making this type of decision should be less stressful, right? Because it's essentially assumed in the analysis to some extent.
We've got the cards in our hand already, and we've been waiting to play them just in regards to flexibility and options with the right plan.
Yeah. Think about the game of Uno. If you've ever played that game, I play it with my daughter all the time, and it's probably one of my fondest games to play growing up. But you might be holding a wild card draw 4 in your hand, thinking, I'm going to go out using this card as my last card, right? Because you have the utmost flexibility. But in reality, you might be forced to use it sooner rather than later just because of how the cards are being drawn and how other players are playing their cards, right? Or maybe it's hey, I got this reverse or skip card, but I have to wait for someone else to play one before it makes sense for me to play one, or at least the color of the card to show up. So the card's already in your hand. It's just strategically, how are you going to use it? And again, if you have more diversification over colors or different types of cards from an Uno perspective, well, now you have more flexibility in how you can play, and there's less probability of you having to go back to the deck to draw more cards when it's your turn.
And you're making less emotional decisions along the way. Right?
Absolutely.
You're playing your cards as they make sense mathematically, more so than how you might feel after a certain color or number comes down.
Right. So all in all, the outcome of the conversation was, okay, well, let's do a little bit of quantitative questioning as well as some qualitative questioning. And let's measure that. Let's do some research and due diligence. The other thing that we didn't talk about is whether or not they even want to do the due diligence in the research, right? Do they want to go to multiple dealerships? Well, in some instances, they may not. So then it's like, okay, well, again, you've already made up your decision. If it's a lack of trust and it's a lack of wanting to go do the legwork, then let's look at the math. And if it doesn't blow up the plan, then let's do the reasonable thing. Let's earn the trust back by transferring this risk to a new vehicle, which hopefully gets you to the length of the way that it needs to, right? Whether it's 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years, or beyond, depending on how your overarching financial plan is actually drawn out.
Well, Michael, I think this has been super helpful from a big picture perspective where clients themselves and their professionals should always start. Comes down to a place of purpose. Why are we making particular decisions? What is driving some of the feelings behind those decisions? And what are our options before we jump straight into the finances? But when it's time to jump into the finances, it's about understanding what plan do we already have in place? And inside of that plan, what cards are we holding? It's understanding how much flexibility we may or may not have, knowing that life is uncertain. And then along the way, making decisions that are best, not only mathematically, but emotionally right alongside each other. And from a big picture perspective, trying to tune out the noise of what's going on out in the world and making decisions based on the facts, the information we know, and what's important to us. So overall, that's a wrap on today's episode. Hopefully, this helps shed some light on the real-life decisions pre-retirees, retirees, or even young professionals are facing when it may not come down to just dollars and cents.
Yeah, remember, financial planning is about more than math. It's about giving yourself the confidence to make decisions that align with your values, your lifestyle, and your peace of mind. We refer to this as humanizing the process.
And if you're wrestling with a when the math doesn't matter moment, whether it's about your car, your home, or any other big financial decision, we would love to hear about it.
Yes, feel free to submit questions or stories at www.genesiswealthplanning.com/AMA, and we might feature them on a future episode.
And if you found today's episode helpful, do us a favor, subscribe, leave a review, share financial fortitude with someone who could use a little more confidence in their financial journey.
Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay wise, stay steady, and remember, sometimes peace of mind is the best investment.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Financial Fortitude Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and learned something along the way.
If you're looking for financial guidance that is personalized to your specific needs, we're here to help. Visit us at www.genesiswealthplanning.com to book a complimentary consultation.
That's it for today. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And as always, please share with others you feel could benefit from the show. See you next time.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Genesis Wealth Planning LLC, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. All scenarios and names mentioned herein are purely fictional and have been created solely for educational purposes. Any resemblance to existing situations, persons, or fictional characters is coincidental. The information presented should not be used as the basis for any specific investment advice. Michael Acosta and Brady are registered representatives and financial advisors of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. Securities, products, and advisory services offered through Park Avenue Securities, member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Park Avenue Securities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Consolidated Planning Group, Inc. and Genesis Wealth Planning, LLC are not affiliates or subsidiaries of Park Avenue Securities or Guardian. Michael Acosta's California Insurance License Number 0M50974 and Brady Hemmerly's California Insurance License Number 4353077. 7237198.1, expiration 727.